Hospital conversion portfolio for the San Jose Hospital in Monterrey, Nuevo León. The need for a conversion portfolio comes from the scenario set by the 2020 COVID pandemic. At the end of 2019, a virus in China was discovered and labeled as COVID-19. In 2020, despite efforts to control it, the virus started to spread worldwide, putting hospitals around the world in a critical situation where, as the cases in each region started to increase, tragically, so did the patients with need of hospitalization. In order to have a better control of the situation, it was determined by the authorities that only some hospitals will be in charge of receiving the patients with COVID, and that was the case for San Jose Hospital. To prepare for the worst case scenario, a set of rules and steps to follow was set for a transformation of the environment.
The purchasing of equipment was needed to cover the needs of expected patient influx. The device assessment allowed us to choose equipment with the best features to provide adequate care and contribute to accelerating patient discharge. It consisted of comparing 5 models of each device selected from 3 categories: monitoring, vital support, and miscellaneous devices. The final selection of technology complies with the needs of a hospital and its infrastructure.
The hospital infrastructure had to be adapted after estimating the surge capacity needed for acute and intensive care. The ICU area was physically modified for COVID-19 patients, respecting infection prevention and control protocols. The patient flows were also regulated to protect both healthcare workers and adjacent areas of the hospital. Electricity, waiting areas, gas intakes, physical barriers, and filters were also taken in consideration for the conversion strategy.
The conversion strategy was divided into 2 main stages: plan and brochure, the designated nearby areas to convert, and continuous training. All these stages were designed in order to increase bed capacity and to ensure the continuous use of specialized technologies. Also, expecting as a result an acceleration of the discharge in additional surge capacity for the COVID-19 patients.
As it can be seen, it is a process with multiple feedback points designed to ensure the smooth development of the strategy. It involves a great amount of planning and road-matching to successfully satisfy the main objective without compromising service quality.
It was required to train, repurpose, and mobilize the health staff according to priority services in the early stages of the pandemic. Eventually, more staff will be hired in order to ensure the desired nurse-to-patient ratio and doctor-to-patient ratio. A post-hospitalization program was created in order to keep monitoring discharged patients that did not strictly need to stay at the hospital, thus optimizing beds, resources, and staff for critical and acute patients who require artificial ventilation, renal support, and constant monitoring to avoid death by common comorbidities ingrained in the Mexican population. To carry out the hospital reconversion project, different national and international norms and standards were taken into account for different activities, such as the selection of different technologies and the creation of manuals, guides, and tutorials for workers, taking into account standards such as NOM 016 SSA 3 2012, NOM 025 SSA 3 2013, and the Manual of Guidelines for the Conversion of Hospitals.
Training is a key aspect in the search of better quality care for better patient evolution. It will consist of quick user manuals, technical manuals, and training sessions. As we can see in the table, they are directed to doctors, biomedical engineers, and nurses respectively. Troubleshooting and warnings are both considered to prepare all the staff faced with an unexpected situation.
I'm proud to say that our hospital conversion portfolio is an easy-to-read document and very easy to follow. It packs a robust and adaptable solution for the future unwanted critical situations where an infectious disease threatens the local or global population. Our main objective was to increase the bed capacity of the hospital by 15% and to train the existing and newly acquired staff to use medical devices with high performance. To do so, we propose a strategy composed of 3 main stages with constant feedback between them. Firstly, It was necessary to plan to what extent we desire to expand our capacity and to analyze the resources that we currently possess. If it's not enough, a budget and a set goal are required. Secondly, we need to let go of some areas to repurpose them to provide intensive care. Naturally, these patients will have to be taken care of in another section of a hospital or somewhere else. And finally, our staff has to be constantly trained to avoid infections, use protective personal equipment, and give exceptional care. Throughout this process, norms, regulations, and recommendations are essential to validate our proposal.
The design of the conversion process was made taking into account different standards in order to provide the necessary information about technologies to the medical staff, as well as to have better organization for the selected area. We based our strategy proposal in 3 stages. The first stage was the plan and brochure estimation, then the designation of areas, and last the continuous training. And for each stage, it was necessary to corroborate that everything goes correct. During the process of the conversion, rules and regulations in the area of infrastructure and equipment management were considered, as well as guidelines on hospital reconversion and COVID prevention. The above in order to have the necessary information and make correct decisions.
The design of the conversion process was made thinking about all the staff involved in the COVID area, having as the main objective its correct organization and functioning. Everything was designed and chosen thinking on patient well-being. It was necessary to repurpose and mobilize the health workforce according to priority services, always following the emergent recommendations in face of the pandemic. To solve the stated problematic in Stage 1, the follow-up program for discharged patients is a strategy that allows, under certain parameters, to discharge patients who don't strictly need to stay in the hospital. This allows to constantly generate new bed spaces and provide the most personalized care possible by always having both the necessary technologies and human resources. Finally, standards and norms were fundamental to select technologies following the basic requirements for the area to function optimally, in addition to properly document the conversion and guide us in key aspects such as training and hospital control.
The design of the hospital conversion portfolio prioritizes the optimization of spaces, staff, and devices. We start collecting information of what is our inventory, and then the things that the hospital already has for us to be able to use. And this way we can budget on what are the things that, in case of lacking, we will need to acquire. Another important part of our portfolio is the proper and continuous training to have a prepared staff for the correct use of devices and spaces. We centered mainly in doctors, nurses, and engineers because they are going to be the ones that are going to interact with everything that we said. Considering the quantity of staff is essential for our work because we have to set how many devices are there going to be, and with this we set how many patients we actually be capable of accepting without a burnout of the staff. The documentation and manuals that we created are easy to read, follow, and understand, so the staff can comprehend in less time how the devices work. Thanks for your attention. If there is any question, we will gladly respond.